Hello and welcome to Achieving the Vision. I'm Melissa Silva, your host for this series. This episode will focus on supporting immigrant populations in education, highlighting the resources, rights, and opportunities available to students and families, regardless of immigration status. Today, we have a special episode where we'll hear from our guest, Marcelino or Mars Serna, Family and Community Engagement Program Specialist at San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools. I'll now turn it over to Ida Hermosillo, Director of Network Engagement at Growing Inland Achievement. She will be leading our discussion today.
Thank you, Alyssa. Mars, I'm so excited to have you with us today. I know how important you are to our community, and as you can imagine, recently, with what we're all navigating, we've had a lot of students and families reach out to multiple people across our network and Growing Inland Achievement to get answers, to understand how to best navigate our current situation and where to get support and resources. So I'm delighted to have you. Having a conversation with you about this important topic is always a pleasure to have you. And so thank you for your time today.
Well, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you as a partner in education in different spaces that we get to work in. This is a great thing to do today, and especially to serve our community in the best way we can possible. This is going to be fun. And thank you, Alyssa, as well.
Excellent. Well, we'll get started with some of the questions that we're getting, and then, bounce them back to you and, feel how we can help our community. So tell us a little bit, as a family engagement specialist at our county office in San Bernardino, how exactly do you have the opportunity to support our students and families?
Yeah, I think sometimes that I have the best job in the world, right? I work at a county office that supports 33 school districts across San Bernardino County. And in that role, I get to engage with educators, I get to engage with families, I get to engage with students and community partners, education partners in a variety of different spaces. And the overall goal is really to ensure that all students have support, that they thrive academically and emotionally. And so that's the role of the county office, really, is to kind of just support in different ways, whether it's family and community engagement, whether it's curriculum instruction, whether it's reducing discipline issues. Like, we have a variety of things that our county office does to make sure that we can help support, school districts. We also do that through providing workshops. We do advocacy training for our parents. We provide resources through the partnerships that we have. And particularly as today's conversation is coming to fruition, supporting marginalized and our immigrant communities right now that are really fearful, they're scared. And so I hope that today I can enlighten them from the education standpoint, right? I don't know all the legal parameters around education. Immigration, I should say, but educational outcomes for me are important. But I want to be able to touch on how the law really supports families in our educational spaces.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. You touch on a very important topic, right? Is how do our students and family have access to not, K through 12 and higher education in our communities? And well, more importantly, that irrelevant to their immigration status. And so lately we've had comments like, should I be sending my children to school? Do they have the right or ability to obtain higher education because of their status? Do you mind sharing a little bit about, what are the rights that our students and families have in accessing K-12 and higher education, regardless of their status?
Yes, and I'm going to first talk about the K-12 space because higher education has different, legal parameters. But in the K-12 system, every child, every student, regardless of their immigration status, has the right to a free public education from kindergarten through 12th grade, and we include now TK and even some preschool programs. So it's important for parents and our educators, because even our own educators don't know this, that they are protected. And there was a lawsuit that was filed back in 1977. It was Plyler versus Doe. And it stemmed in Texas. And what ended up happening was that Texas was charging immigrant families $1,000 a year. This is crazy, right? $1,000 a year to put their kids in public education systems because they felt that at that time those individuals didn't pay their taxes and they felt like they needed to pay their fair share of education. And so, four immigrant families, which were named Doe because they were trying to be named, filed this lawsuit, and it went through various courts all the way up to the Supreme Court, which that ruled, and it was a 5-4 ruling, that undocumented students cannot be denied access to public education, and that schools cannot ask for students' immigration status or require a social security number. So I think that's important, right? Now, in higher education, undocumented students can attend, and I know there's fees and different things that go on if you're, resident of the state, non-resident of the state. So they have different requirements, and I don't want to get into that too much because I don't know all the integral parts of that. But I also do know that through AB 540, which is also known as the DREAM Act, our children have opportunities to go to college, and you know these things through working in GIA. But there's also a thing called the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, also known as FERPA. And
Mhm.
FERPA protects student privacy, ensuring that school records cannot be shared with anyone, including immigration authorities, without the consent or a legal warrant. And we can talk about what that looks like because there's things called judicial warrants and there's things called arrest warrants that a law enforcement entity may put together. So those two things are completely different. But through FERPA, just to understand, students are protected by student privacy. So if an immigration officer, for example, showed up at the steps of a school and wanted to know the status of a particular student, we would not know. We wouldn't share that because we don't know. We're not supposed to collect that information.
That's very resourceful. Thank you for that. Another thing too, I think it's important is resources, right? So sometimes,
Yes.
our students and families, even our own community, don't realize how much happens behind the scenes to support them, not only while they're in school, but just as community members in this topic and many other topics. And so, do you mind sharing, in your experience and in currently navigating the situation in our communities and schools? What is one very reliable source that you can share that you have found helpful in supporting specifically our undocumented immigrant families?
Yeah, it's a great question, Ida. Many of our families that attend schools in districts around the county don't know that many districts have family resource centers or parent centers. But those that do, they're all relational based, meaning that they have created relationships with the families, they've created relationships with community partners to come in and provide a variety of resources. Today, the topic's on immigration, but when we think about food, clothing, shelter, some of the needs that families have, these family resource centers provide that healthcare, dental, eye exams. A great example in our county is Ontario Montclair School District that has the Linda Vista Family Resource Center there, and they provide a gamut of resources for families from GED classes to, like I said, the health, the eye exams, the child care, a variety of different things. So I always encourage parents to just try to find out, does that district have a family resource center? Up in the high desert, I know in Hesperia and Apple Valley, those districts do provide those things. I know that in Snowline, Ryan Holman, who's the superintendent there, he has a community cabinet where he brings people together to be able to share their resources. And then when we think about immigration related legal information or counseling services, again, in education, we're not the experts in that, right? And so we do reach out to community organizations such as the League of United Latin American Citizens, known as LULAC. We also have the San Bernardino County Community Service Center Incorporated, and other local immigrant right coalitions that support, from legal aid to sometimes scholarships for undocumented students. So that's important to know. We also have a good relationship with the Mexican consulate. Tammy Garcia Chang is a great friend of ours at the County Office of Education. And so we've been in communication talking about how can the Mexican consulate support, obviously because we're a border, state to Mexico, but we also are trying to create relationships with the Salvadorian consulate, with the Guatemalan consulate, with the Spanish consulate, when we think about just the
Yeah.
European side, right? Our Spaniards that are Latin. So those are some of the things that we're putting out. Other things that are happening within the school district is these immigrant rights partners are providing things like red cards that allow parents to be able to read, to know what their rights are. And school districts can provide these workshops free of charge at their districts. Now, I will tell you this, I'm going to be very transparent with you. There are some districts, even in our own county, that don't believe that this is something that this district should be doing. Many of our districts believe, not many, but a few believe that they want to continue with what the national rights are in that narrative. And so there are some challenges when we're supporting districts, and because it's local control, we support these districts as they need, right? But
Right.
just know that not every district is providing these, but the majority of our 33 districts in this county. And I'm also seeing, in Riverside County with the 22 that are out there, many are doing great work through their family resource centers to provide these resources for our families.
Yeah, I know we've ordered cards ourselves to provide in workshops, across the district and regions that we do around financial aid. So I think, like anything we do in our two counties, right? Collaborating, and bringing as many resources forward, I think is very important. So thank you for not only sharing but lifting those additional partners that really make a difference in being able to do this outreach and support. And I'd love to add to the list our friends at 211, right? Because they kind of get a list of everything you talked about and more, like mental wellness and emergency aid. So another resource to the list would be, our partners at the 211, through United Way. So thank you for that. You
Absolutely.
did mention a little bit about, the parent involvement, obviously being a family engagement specialist, if you're at the heart of this. What are some ways that parents and guardians can really feel empowered to advocate for their children's education, but also feeling a sense of safety themselves, as the individuals that are advocating, but then also as a family unit? That's something that's come up a lot in our community lately.
Well, Ida, one of the things that I tell people all the time is our schools, our districts are safe spaces for our families and our children. We're here to educate children no matter what their status is. So that's an important piece to understand. And so as a parent, I want parents to feel, comfortable and welcome in their schools. Now, I know it could be difficult. Look, navigating this is not easy right now, and I understand that. But at the end of the day, I really encourage our parents to just stay engaged in their child's school. And they can do that in a variety of ways, right? And they can do it in a way where maybe they may not want to be seen. So maybe they're attending, the special events, the sporting events, those community activities. But if they're not afraid to be seen, and I always tell people, don't be afraid to be seen, right? We need you. We have school meetings, and many of our Spanish speaking families are a part of the English language advisory councils because part of that role and goal is to really support English language learners to improve their academic success in language. And so to be involved in that, our PTAs or PTOs, right, our parent teacher associations, we want them involved in that to support the schools. We also have things like school site councils where there's decision making that happens with some of the funding that happens at the local schools. So go to those meetings and give the input that you need. We also have what we call local control accountability plan forums. We really want parents to come to those forums when we have those so that they can give input on how we can create programs and how that budget should be spent on the children that we serve, right? So that's important to do. And then, as said earlier about knowing their rights, understanding that they do not need to disclose their immigration status to us. So when they show up to school, it doesn't matter who shows up to the doorsteps of our school, right? All we care about is that you're there to support your child. But I will say this, as they're navigating these spaces, Ida, I've been telling parents to establish an emergency plan. And what I mean by that, Ida, is assigning a trusted adult to be the child's emergency contact. Because one of the things that we're kind of afraid of in school systems right now, that if something was to happen to a parent and the child's in school, what's going to happen? Do I got to call CPS to have the child welfare system get into this child's life? Or can I call the emergency number and I see Alyssa here? I say, Alyssa, hey, I need you to pick up little Mars because, mom's not picking him up. And at least have that trusted adult on the child's emergency contact. The other thing that I'm asking parents to do that if they are undocumented, they don't have to tell us, but create a power of attorney for their family that if they were, taken into custody, that they have someone that they can, give that piece of paper to in the event that something happens, that they could care for the children, right? And I don't mean give it to them at that time. They're gonna have to give it to them before that, right? That's that plan. But making sure they have a power of attorney for that covers healthcare, that covers the school system, that covers travel, in case the family gets separated and that child needs to travel maybe across the border, right? That they can do that with that adult member. So that's the other piece. And then, look, I know that our family and community engagement professionals across this county, because I support them through a variety of ways, they are trusted school staff. And I know many of our families have created relationships with them. So continue to connect to those individuals to ask them for the resources. And I'm going to just tell you this, if they don't know at the school site, we have put together a folder with a myriad of resources that we have been sharing across this entire county. And actually, now it's gone statewide because people are like, can I have it? Can I have it? So we've been sharing the link statewide. And so we have that information as well. So please don't limit yourselves to just certain things. I tell people, just keep living your life like you've been living. Obviously, we have to navigate this differently, but do your thing. And in San Bernardino County, I can tell you, in talking to Sheriff Dykes, okay, I'm going to say this. He put a post on social media the other day that they're not working collectively with the immigration enforcement efforts, if there are any, right? Because there is state law that mandates that they don't, and that's controversial because you'll get those folks that say, "Well, then you're not doing your job to protect
Right.
us." You know what I'm saying? But Dykes was pretty courageous to put that out there to just know that if you get stopped by a sheriff, law enforcement vehicle, don't get all scared. I mean, we get scared as it is, but it's not ICE coming after you, right? Just do what you need to do. Don't run. If you have that driver's license, share it information, but do what you got to do, but be safe. So that's the best thing I can tell you around that question, Ida.
Yeah, safety is always a good message, right, to leave our students and families with. I think one thing that also comes to mind as you're having this conversation and sharing all these wealth of resources with us is thinking about how do parents best stay engaged, right? We've heard things as far as like, I'm scared to pick up my child from school, to what if, right? My
Yes.
child needs to be picked up and I got, detained. So I think you bring up very good points. And I want to add to that list of emergency. And I think you shared this with me in another conversation. I also looked through the resources you provided to GIA to share out to our community, is making sure that that person you have on the contact list for your emergency is one, someone who is documented, and that
Yes.
is that reach to come and get your child. Sometimes families have someone listed on there that lives, 6 hours away or in
Yes.
another state. So making sure that it makes sense, right? Someone who can immediately come pick up your son or daughter or child, and that is documented in the event. And I think you shared that with me, right? If in the event, there was other special circumstances, or for some reason, ICE was present, that they didn't have that additional fear to come pick up their child and document. Is there is that
No,
true?
yes, that's great. I forgot to mention that, but yes, you're absolutely right. We want to make sure that the individual that has that power of attorney has legal status in the United States. And the other thing that I encourage parents to have is that that individual, if for some reason, right, Children and Family Services was to get involved, that their home is a safe place, that if they came to inspect, that they would be, vetted in a way that can say, you know what, we can keep this child here, we're good, right? We don't have to place them in foster care. So,
Yeah.
and the power of attorney obviously has some legal ramifications, but at the end of the day, they can still come in and say, well, you know what, you're not fit, or this house is not fit, and we deem it, whatever it is. And so then that creates another layer of issues for that family. And I know that nobody wants that to happen. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that the children are getting their education. And you bring up another point, Ida. If the child happens to end up in a guardianship situation, we as a school district must also provide that free and appropriate education, and they become what's called McKinney-Vento, meaning that at that moment, if their parents aren't with them and they're in a, you know, quote unquote kind of a foster system through that power of attorney, we have to keep them at their school of origin. So you were saying, like, if maybe the family member lives in, I'm going to give you an example, lives in Fontana, but the child was going to school in San Bernardino, that child still has the right to stay at their school of origin, which is in San Bernardino. Obviously, that guardian would have to be willing to be able to transport them back to their school so that they have still that normalcy of that school, right? But again, they could be registered in another district, and having that power of attorney is important because if the parent that is the guardian at that time can't get them to San Bernardino because they're having transportation challenges, at least we can get them enrolled in the school where that individual lives. So that's important to also know.
Very good points. Thank you for that. It's just so much to navigate on top of the fear and the uncertainty, right? And so, kind of our goal with today is to be able to bring this forward and answer some of these questions. We can't help but to acknowledge that amongst all this uncertainty and disruption, there's also just a sense of fear. And that's just fear for safety and what could happen for these families, but even in our students, right? Like, we're hearing things like, should I go to school? Why even continue? I'm safer at home. Somewhat discouraged, right? A feeling of discouragement and uncertainty amongst our own students. And so, could you share maybe just some words of wisdoms, not so that we as community members, as parents ourselves, that we can help, those around us to really kind of lift a little bit of that and allow them to not feel alone, but also to know that there's a lot of love still, amongst our communities and schools for them. And why they should not be discouraged, but on the contrary, feel supported and look forward to still a prosperous and bright future.
Yeah, our schools need to be, welcoming, supportive environments, as I said earlier. And it doesn't matter what background you come with, right? That we need to be inclusive of all. And I know that there are groups out there right now that are pushing for different policies that are just not, friendly, in my humble opinion, to creating those welcoming and safe environments. And we as educators, Ida, we play a key role in making sure that we have safe, inclusive, and nurturing environments. And so I tell my educators all the time, when kids are coming to your campuses, you know, you got to use, inclusive language and affirm that I see you. Like, look, you're doing amazing, right? And even if they're not, hey, you know what? I see you and I want you to do good, and you let me know what I need to do to help you succeed because that's what I'm here for. That's what, I want to be able to do for you at this time. So if you feel comfortable, let me know how I can help you in any way, right? Regardless of their status. And then many of our districts already have what we call safe space policies, right? And so um, the students and the families should feel protected and valued through those policies and our practices, right? And sometimes policies are as good as a piece of paper. We have to get into what we call our practices, making sure that we have a welcoming environment. And so I try to support our districts through staff training to ensure them, how to handle, sensitive situations, to be what I call culturally proficient educators. Sometimes we have issues or beliefs that we have of our own selves that we have to sometimes squash because we're in public education. And if I believe a certain way, I can't put that on that student, right? I got to be able to serve that student in the best way possible, no matter what happens. We also got to make sure things are translated for families, right? To feel comfortable in their own languages. I think our school districts do a great job of making sure things are in English and Spanish, but in some districts, they're speaking like 52 different languages, and so finding the interpreters or the translating services aren't always easy. But do the best you can to make sure that is happening. And then look, Ida, right now there's a lot of talk around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think that those three words have gotten a real bad rap because we are all diverse in different ways. And the goal is to be able to see people through that diversity, not because, people are feeling like they're getting hired through not being qualified is the words that I see. I think that's far beyond the truth. But again, this is my own humble opinion, and it might get me in trouble. But what I mean by that is that we have to be able to reflect and celebrate all backgrounds. February right now is Black History Month, right? And so people are even fearful right now of celebrating that because of the narrative that's happening right now. And our African American families bring such a rich culture, a rich history. And this is the month to, if you don't know, to understand some of that history. And even in our local context, right? Like we've had African Americans in local communities that have just done tremendous things for our communities. But we're also on the heels, and I say heels, I mean, it's not too long ago where we had, streets that divided communities, whether you were black or brown. And so we're still having to navigate that here now in, in 2025, which is so unfortunate. So I hope that helps answer the question that you were asking me, because I can go on that question for
A
the
lot.
next hour.
I, I have to agree. And I think you bring up something of educating ourselves. I think that's an important message too amongst all this, because you're right, DEI is far beyond that, right? It's not excluding that. It's rich in those topics, but also like for people with disabilities is being able to, have a ramp, have special, typesetting and large fonts. So DEI goes beyond. So I think, you leave us with the very important messages. There's a lot at our fingertips. There's a lot of visual and audio information we're receiving on a daily basis, whether it's social media, the news, families, mail. That's great, but we still have the power of educating ourselves. And we can do that, right? Okay, someone said something. Well, how true is this? Where does this exist? Where does this come from?
Fact
So
finding, Ida, is so hard to do. People don't even want to fact find anymore. They see something and it's true.
yeah, yeah. If TikTok says that it's true, right? And so, we don't have to go through encyclopedias and check into the library to get these facts anymore and educate ourselves. It's at our fingertips. So, I love that you mentioned that, because it's important to always, always empower to educate ourselves and strengthen ourselves with the knowledge and wisdom that will allow us to not only feel that safety, share that safety, but then contribute, to our society in a positive way. So I really appreciate you lifting that.
Thank
I
you.
know, we planned on having potentially a bilingual conversation. In fairness, to whether our Spanish is good enough to cover all these very important, deep topics. We might have to have a second episode dedicated to just our Spanish speakers. And I know we're going to provide also the resources you mentioned from San Bernardino County Schools, which is amazing. We've already shared it across many spaces, like you said, getting national attention as well. That has it in Spanish and English to go with this, so that, at least they'll show where they could find this information. But I'd love to challenge you, Mars, to maybe an ending comment for Spanish community. And so I'll ask you, something in Spanish, and we can practice our Spanish and maybe leave them too with some words of wisdom and encouragement. So ¿nos pudieras compartir, por favor, un mensaje de aliento, de esperanza, para todos nuestros estudiantes y familias que en estos momentos se están sintiendo un poco inseguros y tal vez demasiado al riesgo, ¿verdad? Que se sientan con que todavía hay mucho amor en esta comunidad para ellos, hay muchos recursos y formas de recibir ayuda para ellos, para sus familias, especialmente para nuestros estudiantes. ¿Pudieras compartir un poquito para nuestras familias de ese aliento y cómo pueden recibir esos recursos de sus escuelas?
Pues ya que me estás hablando en español y te voy a decir, no te voy a decir Aida, te voy a decir Ida Hermosillo. Y Hermosillo es una persona que es bonita, pretty, right? Hermosillo.
Ya, como narrative hermosa, hermosa.
Hermosa. Mira, yo quiero que las familias sepan esto. Mira, nosotros aquí en el sistema educativo estamos aquí para apoyarlos, para darle los recursos que necesitan, para educar a sus hijos. No estamos aquí para llevarlos a la migración, no estamos aquí para meterlos en la ley, ¿verdad? Estamos aquí para apoyar y para recibirlos. Y no importa lo que esté pasando ahorita en este tiempo, queremos que ustedes estén en nuestras escuelas y nosotros que los queremos en nuestra comunidad. Y estoy hablando de mi corazón, ¿verdad? No hay muchos que van a decirlo así. Hay muchos maestros individuales, los que abogan por ustedes y líderes en la comunidad, que están aquí a tu lado para que ustedes puedan navegar este sistema que tenemos ahorita. Y sabemos que hay mucho, ¿cómo se dice? ¿cómo se dice fear? Ahora ya ves, ahí va
Ya, ya, mucho miedo, mucho miedo.
miedo, el miedo que tengan los padres de ir a la escuela o estar enfrente de la escuela o manejar por la comunidad. Yo les digo, mira, vivan sus vidas como la están viviendo, ¿verdad? Pero hay que tener precaución, eso sí se sabe, pero vivan sus vidas, ¿verdad? Y quédase conectados con las personas que tú sabes y conoces en las escuelas, especialmente las maestras o maestros, los que están ahí para apoyar en el involucramiento de familia, porque tu voz y tu presencia es importante. So, ojalá que esto pase, ¿verdad? Para mí, yo digo, tenemos años ahorita que vamos a pasar, pero siempre en la política viene y va las cosas así. Es como las olas del agua, ¿verdad? Ah, pasan. So, por
Corriente de
favor,
mar.
sigan adelante, ¿verdad? Estamos aquí para apoyarlos.
Gracias, Marcy. Yo creo que qué mensaje tan bonito y yo me apoyo en ti y también me gustaría dejar a nuestra comunidad con el mismo mensaje que todos nosotros estamos trabajando duro para advocar por sus derechos, por su seguridad y que se sientan tanto el amor de la comunidad, pero también de nuestros apoyos en las escuelas, en las universidades, en los colegios y que sepan que somos un recurso para ustedes. Tenemos mucha información que les puede ayudar, al igual que el ejemplo que dio Mars de nuestra familia en este trabajo del el Consulado de México aquí en San Bernardino. Entonces vamos a estar dando información para que ustedes se mantengan al día, pero apóyense en sus escuelas, apóyense en sus maestros, consejeros, que están preparados y tienen la información mejor para poder ayudarles a navegar este tiempo que como dijo Mars, que esperamos todo que sea algo que después miremos para atrás y estemos todavía en un lugar de un futuro fuerte y un futuro unido como comunidad. Con eso te quiero dar las gracias, Mars. Thank you very much, Mars, for everything you shared with us today. Most importantly, from your heart. I think more than ever, our community needs to hear that. I know it touched me as a Hispanic community member myself and advocate for our students and families. And so we thank you for your service in our schools and for educating yourself through so many years of wisdom and resources that in times like this, we can lean on educators like you amongst many others in our San Bernardino County of Schools and Riverside County office to help us navigate the current state of our region. So thank you so much.
Alyssa, it's been an honor. I'm so honored that you even invited me to come here today to speak with you two today. It's been a great opportunity. I just want to remind folks also this is if they listen to this podcast, and their counselors or their staff at the school districts do not know or do not have the resources to connect with us, right? I'm sure you're going to put contact information out. You can share my contact information, but make sure that they forward this information so the more people that get this information, the better equipped we are to navigate these muddy waters.
Absolutely. We definitely will, Mars. Thank you so much. Alyssa, I'm handing it back over to you. Thank you so much for allowing us this time to connect.
Absolutely. We sincerely appreciate Mars and his expertise and sharing his insights with us today. Conversations like these are really essential in ensuring that every student and family, regardless of background or status, has access to the education and support that they deserve. And to you, our listeners, thank you for tuning in and being a part of achieving the vision. We encourage you to continue advocating, learning, and supporting efforts to create a more inclusive and equitable education system. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Melissa Silva, and we'll see you next time.